The night was quiet, and the small town slept under the soft glow of streetlights. Upstairs, in a narrow apartment above a bakery, lived an 8-year-old girl named Lila and her mother. The room was small, the walls old and faded, and the air always carried the smell of baked bread from below. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that was enough for her mother. For Lila, though, there was something missing, something only she could hear deep inside her head. It started the day she found the broken piano. It was lying near the garbage behind the bakery, one leg missing, keys yellowed and cracked. Most people saw trash, but Lila saw magic. She asked her mother if they could bring it upstairs, and though her mother laughed at first, she finally agreed. Together they dragged it up the narrow stairs, each step creaking as if the building itself complained. When they placed the piano by the window, Lila touched its surface like it was alive. She pressed one key and a faint, sad sound came out, broken but still beautiful that night. While her mother washed dishes, Lila sat before it again. She began pressing keys one by one, slowly learning which ones worked and which ones didn't. There were many that made no sound, but the few that did made her heart beat faster. She didn't know how to read music. She didn't know what chords or scales were, but she remembered sounds. Every sound she had ever heard. Songs from the radio downstairs, lullabies her mother hummed, the wind through the bakery's vent, everything. She began to play them back, not perfectly, but with something more powerful. Feeling. Each night when her mother went to bed, Lila stayed up sitting on a wooden crate playing her broken piano. The moonlight fell across the keys like silver threads, and the soft clicking of the loose pedals mixed with her quiet breath. The music filled the small room like a secret, one that only she and the piano knew. Her mother noticed the change. Before, Lila was a quiet child who never talked much at school, never raised her hand, never smiled. But now, her eyes had light in them. She began waking up early just to sit near the piano, her small fingers tracing the keys even when she wasn't playing. Sometimes her mother would listen from the kitchen doorway, pretending not to watch. She didn't understand how her daughter could make something so broken sound so alive. Days passed, and soon the neighbors began to notice too. When the bakery closed at night, people walking home would hear faint notes from the upstairs window. Some thought it was a radio. Others thought it was a recording, but it was only Lila, lost in her music, creating songs that no one had taught her. At school, teachers didn't know what to make of her. She often stared out the window, tapping her fingers on the desk like she was counting invisible notes. When someone teased her for being strange, she didn't answer, she just smiled softly. Because in her mind she wasn't there, she was back home, sitting by her piano, the one friend who never judged her, never spoke but always listened. One rainy afternoon, when thunder rolled outside and her mother was away at work, Lila sat down again. The room was dim, and raindrops ran down the window like tiny rivers. She closed her eyes and began to play. This time something changed. The music came faster, smoother, as if her fingers weren't touching the keys but gliding above them. The sound filled the room, rich and deep, not like a broken piano but like a living heart, beating through every note. She didn't know how long she played, minutes or hours. When she finally stopped, the storm had quieted, and there was only silence. Her mother came home and stood frozen in the doorway. The look on her face said everything: surprise, disbelief, pride. "Lila," she whispered, "where did you learn that?" But Lila didn't answer. She simply smiled and pressed another key, a note so soft. It sounded like a whisper of a dream. That night, her mother sat beside her for the first time as she played. She asked her to play the same song again, and Lila did, faster this time. The broken keys no longer mattered. Each sound danced through the air, landing softly on her mother's tired heart. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not from sadness but from wonder. When Lila finally went to bed, her mother stayed behind, staring at the piano. She had no idea where this gift came from, no lessons, no teacher, no music sheets. Yet in that moment, she understood that her daughter was something rare, something special. She whispered to herself. She was born with it, and turned off the light. But Lila couldn't sleep. She lay awake, replaying the sounds in her mind. The rhythm of her heart matched the beat of the music she had just played. And when the moonlight touched her pillow, she quietly got up. She walked to the piano again, careful not to wake her mother, and for the last few minutes of the night, The little girl played soft, haunting, endless music, as if the piano itself was speaking back to her. Outside, the bakery sign flickered. The town slept, and only the broken piano and the little girl knew that something extraordinary had just begun. One afternoon, the warm sunlight spilled through the bakery window, filling the little apartment with a golden glow. Lila sat by her piano again, her thin fingers dancing over the cracked keys, the sound shaky but full of life. She didn't know anyone was listening from outside. A man had stopped on the street, a music teacher named Mr. Rowan. On his way home from a long day at the town's music school, he heard the faint melody drift down from the open window. Fast, clean and full of emotion that no 8-year-old should be able to play. He froze. At first he thought it was a recording, but when he looked up, he saw the small figure of a girl with messy hair and wide eyes. Completely lost in her own world, Mr. Rowan stepped closer, placing his bag on the sidewalk. He listened as she pressed a series of impossible notes that belonged to a piece called Moonlight Flight, a classical composition that most of his adult students couldn't even attempt. But Lila wasn't just playing it. She was changing it. The rhythm was faster, lighter, more emotional, like the music was breathing through her. When she hit the final note, the sound lingered in the air like a memory that didn't want to fade. Mr. Rowan clapped softly, unable to hold back. Lila jumped, startled, and looked down to see the stranger smiling up at her. He called out, "That was beautiful. Who taught you to play that?" Lila blinked, unsure what to say. No one had ever stopped to talk to her about her music before. She hesitated, then whispered, "No one." The man's smile faded into disbelief. He stepped closer and said, "No one? You're telling me you learned that by yourself?" She nodded slowly, and he could see that her eyes were calm and steady. The kind of eyes that didn't lie. Within minutes, he was knocking on her door. Her mother opened it, surprised to see a tall man holding a leather notebook and a kind smile. "Hello, I'm Rowan. I teach piano at the town's academy," he said. "I heard your daughter playing, and I think she's remarkable." Her mother's first reaction was confusion, then caution. People had always looked down on them. Poor, quiet, living above a bakery. She didn't want false promises. "She's just a child," her mother said. "She plays for fun." But Mr. Rowan shook his head. "No, ma'am. That's not just fun. That's talent I've never seen before." He asked if he could listen again. Lila hesitated, hiding behind her mother's dress. But her mother gently nodded, so Lila sat down, her small feet barely reaching the pedals this time. She played a piece from her memory, a tune from an old radio ad that she had turned into something completely new. Her fingers moved faster than before, her eyes half closed. Mr. Rowan leaned in closer, watching carefully. He realized something extraordinary. She wasn't reading notes. She wasn't thinking. She was feeling. Every sound she made came straight from her heart. When she finished, silence filled the room. Her mother looked worried, but Mr. Rowan smiled with tears in his eyes. "She doesn't need to learn music," he said softly. "She already speaks it." He offered to teach her. He promised free lessons, a real piano, and a chance to perform someday. Her mother looked at him with tired eyes, unsure. They had no money, no time, and no reason to trust strangers, but the way he spoke, the way he looked at Lila, it wasn't pity. It was belief still. She said no politely after he left. Lila asked, "Mama, why did you say no?" Her mother sighed. "Because people make promises, Lila, and promises break." Lila looked down, touching the piano keys gently. "But music doesn't break," she whispered. That night she played again, not out of joy, but out of longing. The sound was different now, deeper, fuller, like she was trying to reach someone far away. Mr. Rowan couldn't get her out of his mind. He sat at home with his own piano, replaying what he had heard. Every time he tried to mimic her style, he failed. "How can a child do what I can't?" he whispered to himself. He decided he couldn't let that gift be buried in a small apartment above a bakery. The next morning, he returned with a small gift, a set of clean white piano keys he had saved from an old instrument at his school. He offered them to Lila's mother, saying, "For her piano, maybe you can fix a few broken notes." Lila ran to the door when she saw him, her eyes shining. She said softly, "Thank you," he smiled. "I'll keep coming by, if that's okay, just to listen." Her mother hesitated, then nodded slowly. It was the first time in years that someone had looked at Lila not as a poor girl, but as something special, Over the next few weeks, Mr. Rowan visited often. He would bring her small exercises and not real lessons, just ways to test her ability. She surprised him every time. If he hummed a melody once, she could play it back instantly. If he changed the rhythm, she changed her fingers to match. He once played 2 songs at the same time on different octaves. She laughed and copied both in perfect synchronization. It was no longer talent, it was genius, pure and untouched. One evening, as the sun set and the bakery closed, he said, "Lila, there's a small competition next month. Would you like to play there?" Her eyes widened. "A competition?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "You'd be on stage with real judges, real pianos, and a real audience." Her heart raced. She had never imagined anyone listening beyond her mother and the walls of their home, but she nodded shyly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to try." As Mr. Rowan left that night, he looked back at her sitting by the window, her small hands resting on the keys, the evening light painting her in gold. He felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. He didn't know then that this shy little girl would soon shock the entire world. But deep down, he knew one thing. She wasn't just playing music, she was rewriting what music could be, one broken key at a time. The morning of the competition came with cold air and nervous silence. The small town's theater stood at the end of the main street, banners fluttering, children dressed in neat uniforms clutching their sheet music. But one child, Lila, stood apart from them all, wearing a plain white dress her mother had ironed 3 times to make it look new. Her hair was tied with a blue ribbon, her eyes calm yet filled with something deep, a quiet fire. Her mother held her hand tightly as they entered, their steps echoing against the marble floor. Inside, the theater buzzed with chatter. Parents whispered to one another about who would win. Some looked at Lila curiously. They hadn't seen her name on the list before. That's because she wasn't supposed to be there. Mr. Rowan had secretly entered her under a different name, Lily Carter, afraid the judges might not take a poor, self-taught girl seriously. He believed once she played, her music would speak louder than any name ever could. Lila sat quietly backstage, staring at the large black piano on stage. It gleamed under the bright lights, perfect and intimidating. She had never seen a piano like that. Smooth, shiny, not broken like the one she played at home. She could almost hear it calling to her. Her heart raced, but not from fear, from excitement. For her, the piano wasn't a test or a contest. It was a friend waiting to talk again. One by one, the other contestants performed. A girl in a pink dress played a soft waltz. A boy in a suit performed a famous Mozart sonata. Each performance ended with polite applause. But the judges looked bored, their pens scratching numbers without emotion. Then came Lila's turn. Her name was called. Next, Lily Carter. Mr. Rowan looked at her and whispered, "Just breathe. Let them hear who you are." Her mother gave a nod, eyes full of silent love. Lila walked to the stage, the audience falling quiet. Her small feet made almost no sound on the wooden floor. She climbed onto the piano bench, adjusted herself, and placed her tiny hands on the keys. The judges stared. She was so small she could barely reach both ends of the keyboard. For a long moment she didn't move. She just listened, not to the audience, but to the silence inside the room. Then she smiled, closed her eyes, and began to play. The first sound burst through the hall like light breaking through clouds. Her fingers moved faster than anyone had ever seen, each note sharp, precise, alive. She wasn't playing the piece the way others did. She was transforming it. In just 3 seconds, the hall filled with what felt like an entire story. A rush of sound so quick yet so complete that even the air seemed to pause to listen. Then silence. The piece ended almost before anyone realized it had begun. For a moment, no one moved. Then whispers began to ripple through the audience. "What just happened?" one judge murmured. "Did she even play the whole song?" Mr. Rowan sat frozen, his mouth open. He knew what he had witnessed, perfection, speed beyond logic. Yet every note where it should be, Lila turned toward the audience. her face calm, expecting applause. But instead she was met with confusion. The head judge leaned toward the others, whispering sharply. Seconds later, he stood and said into the microphone, "That was unusual. Could you explain what you just did?" "Young lady," Lila blinked, unsure what he meant. "I played," she said softly, "the whole song." The audience laughed quietly, thinking she was joking. The judge frowned. "That piece is over 3 minutes long, young lady. You didn't play it." Her mother rose from her seat. "She played it. You just didn't hear it," she said firmly. But the judges only shook their heads. "It's not possible," one muttered. "She must be pretending." Mr. Rowan jumped from his chair. "She didn't cheat," he shouted. "She played every note faster than your ears can follow." The head judge ignored him and turned to Lila. "Child, do you even know what song you tried to play?" Lila looked down, pressing a few soft notes, then said, "Moonlight Flight in C minor, tempo 4 times faster than written." The judges exchanged shocked glances. She was right. Every note she had hit matched that piece exactly, but they refused to believe. The crowd began to murmur louder. Phones were raised. Someone recorded the moment. One man whispered, "Maybe she's using a trick. Maybe it's a recording." Another said, "No child can play that fast." Lila looked around, her small chest tightening. She didn't understand why everyone was angry. Hadn't they wanted her to play beautifully? Tears filled her eyes, but she held them back. Her mother rushed to the stage, wrapping her arms around her. Mr. Rowan followed, trying to reason with the judges. "Run the recording," he said desperately. "Slow it down. You'll hear every note." But the judges refused, calling it an error and impossible. Finally, one of them said coldly, "She's disqualified." The crowd gasped. Lila's mother shouted, "You're wrong. You just don't understand." But security was already walking toward them. As they left the stage, someone in the audience whispered, "Poor kid. Maybe it was all fake." Lila turned one last time to look at the piano. Its black surface reflected her face, small and hurt. She wanted to play again, to prove them wrong, but her mother gently pulled her away. "Not here, sweetheart," she whispered. "They don't deserve to hear you." That night, as the rain fell outside their window, Lila sat at her broken piano again. Her mother watched from the doorway. Silent, Lila placed her hands on the keys and played the same song. Fast, flawless, filled with pain and power. Her fingers blurred, her eyes closed. Her heart poured through every sound, and when she finished, she whispered to herself, "Maybe they couldn't hear me, but the music knows." Outside, thunder rolled softly, like applause from the heavens, and far away the world had no idea that a little girl's impossible performance had already begun to spread. One video, one song, one miracle at a time. The morning after the competition, the whole town was buzzing. In cafes, schools, and even the bakery below Lila's apartment, people were talking about the little girl who played an impossible song. Some said it was fake. Some said it was magic, and others claimed it was a trick done with hidden speakers. But no one could stop replaying the video that had already spread across social media overnight. It was shaky footage, filmed by a boy in the front row, showing Lila's small hands moving faster than the camera could follow. And yet, every sound, every note, was perfectly clear. Downstairs, the baker's wife pointed to her phone, showing the clip to a customer. "Look at this," she said. "They say she's from upstairs. That little girl and her mother." The customer leaned closer. 3 seconds? That's not human." The baker's wife lowered her voice. Her mother always said she was special. Maybe she wasn't lying. Meanwhile, Lila sat by the window, staring at the same video on her mother's old phone. She didn't understand what the world was arguing about. She only knew that she had played her best. The piano had sung for her, but the judges hadn't listened. Her mother sat beside her, trying to smile. "People talk, sweetheart," she said softly. "Let them, you did nothing wrong." But Lila's eyes were distant, lost in thought. She whispered, "Mama, They didn't believe me. What if I really did something wrong? Before her mother could answer, there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, Mr. Rowan stood there holding a stack of printed articles. "They're calling her a fraud," he said angrily. "Look, newspapers, blogs, everyone's saying it was a trick." Her mother frowned. "They don't know her." "I know," he said. "But the judges are doubling down. They told the press it was impossible for an 8-year-old to play that fast." He looked at Lila, his eyes softening. "Lila," he said gently, "do you want to prove them wrong?" She looked up, confused. "How?" He smiled. "By playing again, in front of people who can't deny what they see." Her mother hesitated. "No. I don't want her dragged through more of this. She's just a child." But Lila's voice cut through the air, quiet but firm. "I'll do it," she said. "The music is mine. They can't take that." That night, Mr. Rowan set up his small studio at the town's music academy. Cameras, microphones, and a grand piano waited under soft white lights. He invited a few local journalists and musicians to witness the test. When Lila walked in, they whispered among themselves. "She's the one," one man said. "Let's see what she can really do." Lila sat down at the piano. Her feet barely touching the pedals, she didn't speak and she didn't need to. Mr. Rowan adjusted the microphone and nodded. "Ready when you are." She placed her hands on the keys and closed her eyes. For 3 seconds nothing happened. Then she moved. The sound filled the room like lightning. Quick and sharp, her fingers blurred across the piano, faster than the cameras could focus, and when it ended, the air itself seemed to hum with leftover vibration. The room was silent. One journalist gasped. Another looked at his watch in disbelief. Mr. Rowan turned to the sound engineer. "Did you get it?" The man nodded. "Every note. I slowed the playback. It's perfect." "Every note in place." Lila looked up, her expression calm, almost peaceful. "Can I go home now?" she asked softly. Mr. Rowan smiled. "Yes, you can. You've done more than enough by morning." The new recording had gone viral. People around the world were stunned. News anchors replayed it in slow motion. Scientists analyzed it. Some called her the lightning pianist. Others said her brain worked faster than normal. But not everyone was happy. The competition judges released a statement. Claiming the second video was staged, they said, while impressive, this new performance does not change the fact that her original entry violated the rules of standard tempo. When Lila's mother read the statement, her hands trembled. "They're doing it again," she said. "They can't admit they were wrong." Mr. Rowan was furious. "This isn't about music anymore," he said. "It's about pride. They can't stand that a little girl without training proved them wrong." He took a deep breath. "We'll appeal. They owe her a public apology." Later, the competition board agreed to hold a rehearing. Lila was called back to play once more, this time in front of the same judges. But now with cameras and reporters everywhere, the hall was packed. Flashes from phones lit the stage like stars. Lila stood behind the curtain, holding her mother's hand. Her heart pounded, but not from fear. She felt stronger now, she whispered. "They'll hear it this time." When her name was called, she walked out slowly. The same judges who had accused her sat behind the table. Stiff and silent, she looked at them, then at the piano. It wasn't her broken one, but somehow she felt it still listened. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The notes poured out like water, fast, flawless, emotional. 3 seconds again, then silence. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. People stood, some crying, even the judges were speechless, their pride breaking under the truth of what they had just witnessed. One finally stood and said, I was wrong," the crowd cheered, chanting her name. "Lila! Lila!" Her mother's tears fell freely as she ran to hug her. Mr. Rowan smiled from the side, whispering, "I told you, music doesn't lie." That night, when the world saw the full video online, everything changed. Lila became a symbol not of talent, of truth, and of the courage to play even when no one believes you. And as she sat by her window again, the old broken piano beside her, she whispered to it softly. "They finally heard us then." With a small smile, she pressed one broken key. It didn't make a sound, but Lila still heard it, loud and clear, because sometimes silence can sing louder than any applause. The next morning, the world woke up to one name, Lila, the little girl who played the impossible piano piece in 3 seconds. News channels ran her video on repeat, talk shows debated her talent, and social media overflowed with hashtags like kind lightning hands and the real Mozart girl. But while millions watched in awe, not everyone believed. Some said the video was edited, others claimed it was AI generated. And somewhere deep inside all the noise, Lila sat quietly in her small apartment, unaware that she had become the center of a worldwide storm. Her mother's old phone kept buzzing. Messages from journalists, musicians, and strangers filled the screen. Is your daughter really 8? Can we interview her? Would she perform live for our show? Her mother didn't know what to do. She worked part-time at the bakery and had never dealt with fame. All she wanted was to protect her child from the chaos outside. But fame doesn't knock politely. It breaks the door open. When Mr. Rowan arrived, he found Lila at her piano. She was playing softly a slow, sad tune that didn't sound like victory. He smiled gently. You did it, Lila. The whole world is talking about you. But she didn't look up. Are they happy or angry? She asked quietly. He paused, unsure how to answer. Both, he admitted. Some people think you're a miracle, others think you're too good to be real. She stopped playing and stared at her reflection in the piano's glossy surface. Her voice was small. Then maybe I shouldn't play anymore. Mr. Rowan knelt beside her, his voice calm but firm. Don't ever say that, he said. People always doubt what they don't understand. But music isn't for them, it's for you. She nodded slowly, though her eyes still carried the weight of disappointment. Meanwhile, outside, reporters crowded the bakery's entrance. Camera crews parked their vans along the street. The baker's wife was shouting at them to move as flashes from cameras lit the windows above. Lila peeked through the curtain and gasped. Her mother pulled her away. Stay inside, she said. The world can wait. By evening, one of the biggest news channels requested a live broadcast. A performance to prove everything. Mr. Rowan thought carefully, then turned to Lila's mother. This is her chance to show the truth once and for all, he said. But it must be her choice. Her mother looked at Lila, her heart torn. She didn't want her little girl on display again. But she also knew. Hiding from the truth was not who Lila was. Lila looked up with quiet determination. I'll play, she said. One last time. The studio lights were blinding. Rows of cameras surrounded her. Every lens pointed at her small hands. The host smiled wide for the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we bring you the mysterious prodigy, Lila, the girl who plays the impossible. The crowd clapped politely. More curious than supportive, her mother stood behind the curtains. Holding her breath, Mr. Rowan stood near the piano, ready to protect her if things went wrong. Lila took her seat, her feet barely brushing the floor. The grand piano gleamed under the lights, each key waiting for her touch. She closed her eyes and whispered under her breath, Please don't fail me. And then, she played. The sound that came out was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. It wasn't just speed this time, it was beauty, rhythm, emotion. Her fingers moved so fast they became a blur. But the notes were crystal clear. Every second felt like an entire lifetime of music unfolding. When she finished, there was silence. Then slowly, the audience began to stand one by one, clapping, cheering, crying. The video hit the internet within minutes. In an hour, it had 10 million views. Musicians analyzed it frame by frame. Scientists argued about human reflex limits. And ordinary people simply said, she's magic, but still. Among all the love, there was hate. Some called her a machine child, others accused her of tricking the public. Conspiracy theories filled the internet. She's a robot, she's fake, she's controlled by AI. Lila read a few of the comments that night, her small hands trembling. Her mother quickly took the phone away, whispering, Don't let their noise drown your music. But the noise was loud, louder than her piano. Mr. Rowan decided to take action. He arranged a meeting with the world's top music scientists, people who studied sound, rhythm, and speed. They tested Lila in a lab, connecting sensors to her hands and brain. She sat calmly while they measured everything, her heartbeat, her reaction time, her nerve signals when they asked her to play. She smiled shyly and said, Can I close my eyes? They nodded, and once again, she played, and faster than before, yet perfectly synchronized. The result stunned everyone, one scientist whispered. Her brain fires notes before her fingers even move. It's like she sees the sound before it exists. The next day, the headlines changed. Lila is real, science confirms the lightning pianist. People cheered. Schools invited her. Sponsors offered contracts. And universities wanted to study her mind, but through it all, Lila stayed the same. She still played on her broken piano at home, her small feet swinging from the chair. Fame didn't touch her heart, only the music did. That night, as the city lights shimmered outside the window, Lila sat beside her mother. "Mama," she said softly, "do you think the music came from me?" Her mother smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No," she whispered. "I think it came through you." Lila thought about that for a moment, her eyes bright but distant. Then she turned back to the piano. She pressed one key, then another, the sound soft and slow this time, and as her mother listened, she realized her little girl wasn't chasing fame or fighting doubt. She was simply doing what she was born to do, play the truth hidden inside silence and in those quiet notes. The world began to listen again, one heartbeat at a time. The day the world changed for Lila began with a quiet knock on her door. It was early morning, sunlight spilling through thin curtains, dust dancing in the golden light. Her mother opened the door, expecting a neighbor. But standing there was a tall man with silver hair, wearing a dark coat and holding a single white rose. "Good morning," he said in a soft accent. "My name is Maestro Heinrich. I came from Germany to meet the girl who defied time." Lila peeked from behind her mother's leg. Her eyes wide, the man smiled warmly, bending slightly. "You must be Lila, the little pianist who makes time listen." His voice carried both kindness and curiosity. Her mother was startled. "You came from another country?" He nodded. "Yes, I had to hear it for myself. The performance that everyone calls impossible." They invited him inside, the room smelling faintly of bread from the bakery below. The maestro looked around, the cracked walls, the worn-out furniture, and then his eyes stopped at the broken piano. He walked toward it slowly, touching its chipped surface with the same reverence a priest gives to an altar. "This," he whispered, "is where the miracle happened?" Lila nodded shyly. "It's not very good anymore," but Heinrich smiled. "No, my dear. It's perfect on that because it listens to you." He sat down on the old stool and pressed a few keys, grimacing as one made a dull clunk. Then he turned to her. "Play for me." "Lila, anything you wish," she hesitated. Glancing at her mother, who nodded gently, taking a deep breath, she placed her hands on the cracked keys. The moment her fingers touched, everything changed. The maestro froze. Even on this broken piano, her sound was clear, alive. The notes didn't just ring. They spoke. It was as if the room filled with light no one else could see. When she finished, silence hung in the air like sacred smoke. Maestro Heinrich's eyes glistened. "I've taught thousands of students," he said slowly, "but none ever played like that." He took a small folded paper from his coat, a sheet of music, covered in scribbles. "This," he said, "is called the Devil's Waltz. It is said no human can play it perfectly. The tempo, the complexity, the emotion, it breaks the player's rhythm." He placed the sheet in front of her and added, "I want to see something, Lila. Play this." Her mother gasped. "She's just a child." But Heinrich raised his hand gently. "I will stop her if it's too much." Lila studied the notes, dozens of symbols, rising and falling like mountains on paper. She had never seen such chaos, but somehow, her mind began to translate it. Each mark became a sound, each line a heartbeat. She nodded once, quietly. "I can try." The maestro turned on his recorder, the small red light blinking. Lila closed her eyes for 3 seconds. She sat perfectly still. Then her hands moved. The music erupted like a storm. Her fingers blurred so fast they seemed to vanish, yet each note landed exactly where it should. The melody twisted and turned, wild and beautiful. It felt like the piano was no longer an instrument, but a doorway to something beyond sound. When the last note hit, the world went silent again. The maestro didn't speak, didn't even breathe. After what felt like forever, he whispered, 3 seconds. She did it in 3 seconds. He pressed the replay button on his recorder, slowing it down. Every note was there, perfect, flawless, breathtaking. Her mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down. Heinrich turned to her with trembling hands. Do you understand what this means? Even machines can't process sound this fast. She's ahead of time itself. He sat down slowly, looking at Lila with wonder and fear. What goes through your mind when you play? He asked softly. She tilted her head, thinking. I don't know, she said. It's like the music plays first in the air and I just follow it. Her answer sent chills down his spine. You don't play music, he said. You see it before it's born. That night, the maestro went live on an international broadcast, announcing what he had witnessed. The child named Lila, he said, has redefined what it means to be human. He showed the recording, slowed down, analyzed every note visible on the sound graph. The world went silent as the video played. Experts confirmed it. Her timing defied logic. She had played 200 notes in 3 seconds. Each one precise, no machine, no computer. No human had ever done it. Lila's name became legend overnight. But inside her small apartment, she stayed the same. Her mother cooked dinner. Mr. Rowan dropped by with flowers, and Lila still played her broken piano before bed. Yet something inside her had changed. She began to hear melodies in everything. The hum of the fridge, the rhythm of the rain, even her heartbeat. It was as if the world itself had started speaking in notes only she could understand. One evening, as she sat alone by the window, the city lights twinkling below, the maestro returned. He carried a polished, golden metronome, a gift. This belonged to Beethoven's student, he said softly. It has guided many masters, but tonight, it belongs to you. He placed it on her piano and whispered, Remember, Lila, time bows only to those who listen. She smiled shyly, her fingers touching the cool metal. Thank you, she said. But I don't want time to bow, I just want it to dance. The maestro froze, then laughed quietly. You truly are beyond all of us. That night, when everyone slept, Lila played once more, a new song, faster, softer, endless. The stars outside seemed to shimmer in rhythm with her music, and somewhere across the ocean, radios flickered, picking up a faint signal, the echo of her melody. It lasted only 3 seconds, but millions heard it without knowing why they felt tears on their cheeks, because even time itself had stopped just to listen. The sun rose over the city like gold poured from heaven. It had been 1 month since Lila's name echoed across the world. She was no longer just a child from a small bakery apartment. She was a phenomenon. News reporters called her the girl who beat time. Scientists called her the human metronome. And musicians called her the miracle of sound. But Lila didn't care about titles, fame, or cameras. She still sat beside her broken piano every night, playing softly. Her hands never moved for attention. They moved for love. Still, something inside her had shifted. She missed being invisible. Missed the quiet evenings with her mother and the smell of baked bread rising through the floorboards. Everywhere she went now, eyes followed her. Microphones waited. Even her walk to school had become a parade. She told her mother one morning, They don't see me, Mama. They only see the sound. Her mother smiled sadly. That's because they're afraid of how big your gift is. Lila, and sometimes people fear what's too beautiful. Meanwhile, the judges from the competition that once called her a fraud were under pressure. The world demanded an apology. Musicians, journalists, even other contestants, how could you fail a genius? One headline read, another declared, 8-year-old girl proves the experts wrong. The judges couldn't escape it. Everywhere they went, people pointed, and finally they gave in. They announced a public review, a televised event where they would face Lila again and, if proven wrong, offer their apology before the world. The hall was the same one where Lila had been humiliated weeks before, but this time it looked different, packed with people. Cameras flashing, reporters whispering, a giant banner hung above the stage. The rehearing of Lila, the girl who played the impossible. Mr. Rowan stood beside her backstage, straightening her dress and whispering, No matter what happens out there, just play the truth. Her mother took her hand, squeezing it gently. I'm proud of you. My love, you've already won. When her name was called, the crowd fell silent. She walked slowly to the piano, her small frame glowing under the lights. The same judges sat behind the long table, faces pale with guilt and shame. Cameras zoomed in on her expression, calm, composed, almost serene. One judge cleared his throat nervously. Miss Lila, he began, Today we give you a chance to play again, so that we may correct our error." She looked up and said softly, "I'm not here for correction." The judge blinked, confused. "Then why are you here?" She smiled. "For the music." The audience gasped softly. Even her voice carried a rhythm that felt like poetry. She turned toward the piano and sat down. The grand piano gleamed, perfectly tuned, waiting. She closed her eyes, and for a moment everything went still. Then her fingers moved. The first note was soft, almost like a whisper. Then came another, and another. The hall filled with a sound so fast yet so clean that it seemed unreal. 3 seconds, and that was all it took. But in those 3 seconds, the world stopped breathing. Every camera froze on her hands. Every heart beat slower, and when the final note echoed, the silence that followed was louder than thunder. For a long moment, no one moved. Then one of the judges stood up, trembling. I accused you," he said, voice cracking. "I said you cheated, that what you did was impossible." He turned toward the audience. "But now I see, I was the one who couldn't believe." The second judge rose too, his eyes wet. "We were blind," he said, "and she opened our ears." Finally, the head judge, the same man who had once called her performance a trick, stood slowly, his voice breaking. "Lila, on behalf of this entire panel, we were wrong." He stepped forward and bowed before her. The crowd erupted, applause, cheers, tears. Even the cameramen forgot their jobs, some wiping their faces. Lila didn't smile in triumph. Instead, she stood, bowed slightly, and said softly, "Music doesn't need justice. It only needs to be heard." Her words echoed across the hall, rippling through everyone's chest. Her mother sobbed quietly, hiding her face in her hands. Mr. Rowan looked up at the stage, his eyes glistening with pride, whispering to himself, "She's more than music now, she's hope." The judges invited her to perform one last piece, something of her own. She nodded, closing her eyes once more. This time, she didn't play with speed or power. She played with love. A melody so soft and haunting that even the air seemed to cry. It was her story. Every struggle, every doubt, every dream wrapped into one river of sound. The broken piano, the bakery, the silence, the shame, the forgiveness, all inside those few seconds. When she finished, no one clapped at first. They just sat still, breathless. Then came the standing ovation, the kind that feels like it will never end. That night, the video went everywhere again, but it wasn't titled Genius Girl or Fastest Pianist Alive. It was simply called The Day Justice Heard Her Play. And as millions watched, tears filled eyes across the globe, not because of speed or skill, but because of truth. After the event, reporters surrounded her, microphones in her face. "Lila, how do you feel after proving everyone wrong?" one shouted. She paused, her soft voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't prove them wrong," she said. "I proved that music doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to the heart." Then she turned, taking her mother's hand, walking quietly out of the hall while the crowd chanted her name. Outside, the air was cool and quiet. The city lights reflected on wet streets, and Lila looked up at the sky. Her mother smiled. "You did it?" Lila shook her head gently. "No, Mama, we did." Somewhere behind them, the echoes of applause still floated through the night. But to Lila, the only sound that mattered was the soft humming of the wind, a melody that no one else could hear. Because in her world, even the silence had a song. Years passed, yet people still spoke her name like a legend whispered through time. Lila, the girl who played a full masterpiece in 3 seconds, the child who silenced her critics, humbled the proud, and reminded the world that genius could bloom anywhere, even above a bakery with a broken piano. But Lila didn't live like a star. While others chased fame, she chased sound. Her world was still small. Her piano, her mother, the little window where morning light poured in like gold. But the world around her had changed. She was now 17, tall, graceful, her once shy eyes carrying the calm confidence of someone who had seen both the beauty and cruelty of fame. Every major concert hall wanted her. Letters from universities, Invitations from presidents, even offers from record labels arrived daily, but Lila refused most of them. When people asked why, she always smiled softly and said, "Because music isn't about showing off. It's about listening." Instead, she spent her years studying the science of sound, the way music touched memory and emotion. She began writing her own compositions, not fast ones this time, but slow, deep melodies that made people cry without knowing why. Her concerts were different from anyone else's. No lights, no fancy gowns, no stage effects, just her piano, and silence. The kind of silence that feels sacred before the first note begins. But despite her peace, one thing never left her mind. Her old, broken piano. She had kept it all these years. Though it could no longer play, it sat in the corner of her new studio, covered with a white cloth. Sometimes she would touch its keys gently, like greeting an old friend. It was that piano, not any of the grand ones she now owned, that had made her who she was. One morning, Lila received a letter sealed with gold. It was from the World Music Council. They invited her to perform at the Global Harmony Gala, a once-in-a-lifetime event where the greatest musicians gathered to perform for world peace. Her mother smiled proudly. "You must go, my love. It's your time." But Lila hesitated. "I don't want to impress them, Mama. I want to remind them." Her mother tilted her head. "Remind them of what?" Lila smiled. "That music doesn't come from fame. It comes from pain, from love, from listening to the quiet things." When the night of the gala came, the world watched. The stage was enormous, lit by silver lights, surrounded by an orchestra of the best players alive. The audience included kings, presidents, and artists, all waiting for the girl who had once made time stop. As she walked onto the stage, the air grew still. Her black dress shimmered under the lights, her hair tied back simply, her hands calm and steady. A journalist whispered, "She's the one. The girl who beat the judges." Another said softly, "No, she's the one who taught them how to listen." Lila sat before a flawless grand piano, polished, perfect, powerful. But as she looked at it, something inside her felt distant. She leaned toward the microphone and spoke softly, her voice gentle but firm. "Before I play," she said, "I want to tell you a secret." The audience leaned forward. "My first piano was broken," she continued. "Half the keys didn't work, and every note sounded different. But it was the most honest piano I ever knew." A quiet laugh rippled through the crowd, but she smiled and went on. "It taught me something important. That beauty doesn't come from perfection. It comes from imperfection that refuses to give up." She paused, looking down at her hands. "And tonight I will play one last song. Not for fame, not for applause, but for the little girl who played in silence when no one believed in her." Then she began. The first note rang through the hall like a heartbeat. Slow, pure, gentle. Then faster, louder, brighter. Her fingers flew across the keys, but not with the lightning speed of her childhood. This time, every sound was deliberate, full of memory and soul. Each chord told a story, of pain, of doubt, of forgiveness, of love. The melody rose like dawn breaking after a storm. And then, in the final 3 seconds, she stopped. Her hands hovered above the keys, frozen in air. The audience held its breath. No one dared to move. Then she struck one final chord, just one. It echoed through the hall like a promise, soft yet eternal. And silence followed, deep and endless. People didn't clap immediately. They couldn't. They just sat there, tears on their cheeks, hearts full. When they finally stood, the applause wasn't loud. It was long, a wave of love, respect, and awe that rolled across the hall like music itself. Backstage, reporters crowded her, microphones flashing. "Lila, what do you call that final piece?" one asked breathlessly. She smiled, her eyes glimmering. "It doesn't have a name," she said softly, "because real music doesn't need one." Then she turned to leave, but someone called out, "Wait, what did you mean when you said you played it for the little girl?" She paused at the doorway. "I meant," she whispered, "that I finally played for the one person who always believed in me, the sound inside me." That night she returned home. The moonlight painted the floor silver as she uncovered her old broken piano. Her mother stood at the door. Watching quietly, Lila sat down, her fingers tracing the cracked keys. "Hello again," she whispered to it. "I didn't forget you." She pressed one broken key. No sound came, but she smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You don't need to speak anymore," she said softly. "You already told the world our story." Outside, the wind carried the faint hum of her final melody. The city lights flickered like quiet applause, and in that small apartment above the bakery, the girl who once played for no one had finally played for everyone. And for the first time, the world listened, truly listened, to the silence between her notes, because in that silence lived the heart of music itself, and its name was Lila.